Antxon, we're live on the podcast, episode 4 or 5. Thank you so much for being my third official guest. I appreciate you so much for coming, and it's so good to see you as always. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. I mean, I remember when we first started having conversations a couple of months, and you started really developing the idea, but most impressively executing it this way. I'm really happy and I'm really thrilled because all the conversations that we have is like there's never enough time and they're always very enriching. So I really appreciate you invited me to be here with you.
Always. And it was funny because when you and I we spoke 2-3 weeks ago, that conversation we had, and you were saying, I wish that we could get this recorded, right? I wish that we could get on a podcast and get this recorded, and here we are.
It's a lot of the wisdom. We need to share the wisdom, and maybe people judge. They may like it more or less, but it's always getting that additional, vision or layer of data in order to make a more sound and objective reasoning.
Very, very well said. But before we even get there, I would love for you to share a little bit, please, who you are, what is it you do, how do we even know each other? For those who don't know you, I know a lot of people here who are watching will know you, but those who don't, do you mind sharing a little bit, a brief intro about yourself, please?
Sure. Well, I'm a bit of an unusual kid. My background is my mom is half Lebanese, half Polish. My dad is Spanish, and I was born in England. Through the Lebanese side, that's where our connection comes from our mothers and our parents, our friends, and we were also neighbors. And I've had a very international background from an early age. Like most Lebanese, I've had to move around a lot. And my parents have instilled that in me. So even though I've moved a lot due to my parents' jobs, which I was born in London, lived in Spain, lived in Brazil, I also decided to take more of an international career, where I started my career working in banking in Geneva, where I did Merrill Lynch, JP Morgan. Very insightful, great lesson, but I just didn't find that fulfilling. The golden cage sometimes just didn't manage to keep me locked. So then I went to create my own business in Panama. And that was a great experience. I just from Geneva, I came to Spain with my cousin. We decided to create a certain specific business within our network in Panama. And we went there for a couple of years. The venture didn't go as expected. But again, it's how do you see it? If the glass is half empty, half full. I didn't reach my desired outcomes, but I did learn a lot of experience that made me grow not only professionally, but personally as well. And from then on, I just started working within the digital realm. And now I just work within the digital ecosystem, mostly B2B, SaaS, long sales cycle. I've worked in the big data space, in the front-end development space, in the basically additional value-added functions for financial institutions. But again, I do spend a lot of time doing sports. I do spend a lot of time reading. I'm a proud father, married to a wonderful wife, and have 2 wonderful kids. And I do try and spend as much time with them. And luckily, working within this new digital space and ecosystem, it allows you to spend more time with your kids because there's more results are based on accountability and objectives. And that allows me to spend time with my kids. So that's about it. My hobbies, I like doing a lot of sport, reading, listening to podcasts, and having great conversations with my friends. and just to get finally, where do we know each other? Uh-huh. Besides my mom being Lebanese, your mother and your father being Lebanese, we were neighbors. And our story, and just let me say one other thing, is our story is very curious because we've always been neighbors, we've always known each other, but we've never had a conversation like this until 3-4 months ago.
That's true. That's very true. But I think it's also I was very young. I don't know how much younger I am than you, but when we were living in when we were neighbors, I was much younger than you. So also, I feel like that plays a part. Would you not agree?
It's true, but I think that besides our values, which I think are the same, that already unites us a lot. Yeah. But man, we had a conversation and there was no age, nothing. Right. There was just pure curiosity, ability to learn, to grow on both sides. So it's funny because we've been very close to each other, meaning physically because of where we lived and we're located.
It's so true.
But were so far from each other, and now it's kind of like it's funny how life.
I love how you said that, but for me, I think I want to share from my side what I loved about that moment when we reconnected. It was during a time when I just came back to Spain. I was a little bit lost where I didn't know. It's the typical. I think I say this that when you're 20, the worst feeling as a 20-year-old, or the most debilitating feeling as a 20-year-old, is to not have a viable career path. So I don't know if you could agree when you were 20, but I remember I just finished college, and I was in that in between where do I want to go back home to Spain? Am I going to stay in Canada? What am I going to do? I was applying to a bunch of jobs in the U.S. The visa didn't work. Then coming here back to Spain, I was a little bit in that networking phase. And I remember I was networking. I think I told you this. I was hitting up so many people, and you were the only one who hit up me at that time. I think because you had seen my dad. He told you that, hey, Julian is a little bit lost, like maybe or just go meet up with him. I don't know what he told you.
Well, no, I mean, I'm working closely with Bill. He's really helping us a lot. And no, he told me that you were very looking into things, and I just said, oh, I'm just gonna, because man, a lot of people have helped me in today in getting where I are, where I am, no, and I immediately felt that probably you had a lot of the curiosities and inquietude that I maybe would have had at your age. And thing is, I got many answers as I grew older, not when I was younger, because I just felt like I had a very predetermined career path. And I just felt that I just shared with you my opinion, and there's no good or wrong nor right. It's just simply
understanding each other.
It's understanding each other. But again, what you do is very valuable because, and I love this, like you said, when you started launching your newsletter of how, look, I really appreciate your feedback, but that's how you do. You get all the different layers of data. You speak to all the different people, and you make your opinion, and that's why you made a very sound decision. And there is no right or no wrong. Because 100%. One path leads you to another, and that path may be the final one, or it may lead you to another. The thing is just Churchill used to say, "Success is not final, and failure is not fatal."
Wow!
And you need to go from failure to failure without losing hope until you get to that.
And that's one of the many reasons why I enjoyed that conversation with you. Your quotes, your philosophy, your mentality. And I remember that day you were the only person as well when we met that you didn't tell me what everybody else I was meeting with was. And then no shade to anybody else. They were giving me very good advice and in their own perspectives, and I was understanding them. But you were the only one who didn't talk to me about, oh, you should go do this, go find that job, or go apply to this, forget your passion. You were the only one who just had a conversation with me, and we just talked. And I thought it was so beautiful. You told me also you were going to give me a beautiful book that changed your life. And 2 weeks later, we met up again, and you gave me that beautiful book, which was...
The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday, yeah.
What a beautiful, beautiful book. And I think you told me, what effect did that book have in your life?
Well, I mean, that book had a huge effect because I listened to the podcast of Ryan Holiday and Joe Rogan just a year and a half or so ago, and I was going through a very complicated situation. I don't want to give too much details about it, but I listened to the podcast and it immediately resonated with me, and it teaches you that today we live in a world where people always look at problems outwardly rather than inwardly, and there's many things that we cannot control in this life, and those things that we cannot control do affect us way more than they should. Mm-hmm. What we need to do is take control and action and say, there are things we cannot control. We need to do the best we can with what we have and not let that affect. And it's way easier said than done. That's why it requires a daily exercise, hence the Daily Stoic. Hence that you need to read a page every day, remember, read, digest, understand. And I spent New Year's Eve with my wife in Naples. A friend of my wife's invited us to this marvelous party, and I met some very, very interesting people from all ages, all races, all countries, nationalities. It was really amazing, and I had a really profound and insightful conversation with a very respectful psychoanalyst here from Madrid, and he was telling me that the knowledge of Stoicism, meaning Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, it's millennial. And he was telling me that the basis and the foundations of much of the modern psychology is done through these same lines of thought. And look at us, we're all sick. You tell me, I told you the effect it had on me, tell me the effect it had on you.
It had a very... just the time that you gave it to me was very timely. You gave it to me during November when I was... again, in that phase, so I started reading it every day. But I started reading it more than just 1 page a day. I was doing 1 page a day, but then I always wanted more. So I started doing 2 or 3 or 4 pages a day. And I kind of realized, I agree with you, that it was nicer to just practice that 1 page and reading it over and over and over. And that had a profound effect. So I think the first week or 2, I was doing 3 to 4 pages a day. And then 2 weeks in, I noticed, okay, I think I'm not putting into practice what I'm reading. So I should maybe go and do what Antxon is saying. Do 1 page a day, And if you don't understand it, read it once in the morning, once at night, and then practice it. And I would realize doing it that way, my subconscious was playing at it and picking at it way more diligently than it was when I was reading 3 to 4 pages. And I think that effect, and now I kind of stopped around, because I had got into the month of February. You know how the book starts in January, then goes Feb and March?
Yeah.
I ended up getting to like February, and I was like, I want to wait and properly do it. So I kind of stopped. I got also the other book I just showed you. So I started reading the other one and kind of forgot about this one till now. So now that February just happened, I just started reading the Daily Stoic again, 1 page a day. Sometimes I'll reread that page, morning, night. But the quote at the beginning is beautiful. Every quote, it starts with that quote of the day. It's a beautiful quote. And sometimes I will just read the quote and then read the remaining pages at the end of the day.
Okay, that's very good.
To let it simmer,
Yes, exactly, and that's what it's all about. And I love, my wife always says that I shred experiences. So like when traveling, go to this place. Let's say last time we went to like on a big backpacking travel was in 2019. We went to Burma just to find the coffee, and the way that I was living, like I was just shredding. I wanted to do this and go through this experience. I wanted like put an experience that I should have enjoyed and do calmly. And I put in the shred. Okay, I've done it. And I realized that this book also makes you like take a step back and enjoy, look at things in a different way. And it's very important because I was actually speaking this with my in-laws where I was having lunch now. And it's funny how sometimes the universe aligns and you have a thought in your head and different people come and give you different lines of conversation on that same topic that they come around. And my topic now is we do not live. We don't live. At this, first of all, I don't think we're designed nor constructed to be living in the lifestyle that we've created, the 9-to-5 job, what yes, what not. But our life is so intense that we just don't live. We just go through the day doing things that I don't think are that rewarding in many cases, and we do not live. We don't have the time to step back, enjoy, look at the sky, have a coffee, smoke a cigarette or cigar, or have a whiskey, whatever.
Have a conversation.
And have an open conversation. And we don't live because of the speed at which the society has been.
We're constantly socialized. We're socialized left and right, and people are not able to just sit down with their thoughts. We're not able to just sit down. And this is why there's so much mindfulness talk, because we are not able to engage in the simple process of sitting down and just thinking with your thoughts. I've started to do this with the sauna now. In the sauna, I will obviously not take my phone, although I've seen some people who take their phone, but we'll try to sit down, and if I'm lucky on a good day, there'll be no one. And if there's no one, it's very easy where I can just sit down 10, 12 minutes and get down to the bottom of every single one of my thoughts. Like, I will actually sit down and try to, like, somebody said this on a podcast, it was like going through emails. You're going through every email, reading it all, scanning it, understanding your thought, and moving on to the next one. That's the only way you can get a clear mind is by actually sitting down. Do you do that? Do you go to the sauna?
And it's the power of then what you're doing as well is you're also using the power of visualization. No? I just wanna say something, and I think it's very important. A lot of people like to preach and say this and that and whatnot. I'm just giving you my experience. What I'm telling you is what I learn, what I read, and I'm flawed as all human beings. So even though I'm saying what I think should be practiced, I don't do it all the time. I just simply try to improve and do it because it's very easy to give lectures and lessons, and I did it. I'm not into that. I'm very flawed. I've got a lot of limitation, but these are the things that I do try to read and do and think about and meditate to become a better person and enjoy more of my life.
That's very true, and that's what I say in all my newsletters at the beginning. I'll say, I will never tell you what you should or shouldn't do. This is what I'm doing, and if it works for you, it works for you. It's like everything that I'm doing. I'm posting a lot of my stuff on Twitter. I'm doing the newsletters. I'm doing the podcast. It doesn't, like I told you the other day, people can give me their opinion. They can give me their criticism. They can give me their feedback. At the end of the day, what matters is my opinion for myself and what I want to do. I will take the consideration. I will deeply think about it, but what matters is what I think about it.
Exactly.
If I like it.
But not everybody has that capability. And that's admirable because you get every source of data and input giving it to you, and you make your own decision based on your own criteria. And that's another thing. Thing is, and something that, again, I admire and value a lot about you, is that I believe that the origin of the word philosophy, you know what the word philosophy means?
Do tell me.
The word philosophy means love of wisdom.
Okay.
And the basis and the foundations of philosophy were built upon asking questions.
Of course.
And nowadays, everybody's an expert in everything. everybody knows about everything. And that's something that I like a lot about you, because you really take the time to assimilate, digest all different sources of data and information to make your own opinion, and you ask a lot of questions, and that's why that I learned more from you in the last meeting that we had together, and you can even imagine in a very long time from anyone who has really inspired me and made clicks in my mind of what I should do or not, and what's flawed about myself. But what I really appreciate is the ability to have that two-way conversation, and again, not based upon a headline or something very basic, or something very, how do you say the word I'm looking for, very clickbait or high level, but something like very well deep, not only research, but also I feel that you've experienced a lot, and you apply a lot your knowledge, your research, and also your experience, which I think is very valuable.
I really appreciate you saying that, Antxon. That's so nice, especially coming from you. I admire you so much, and especially these last few months, as you said, we connected so much. But I think it has to do with what you're saying about that people. You said this maybe 5 minutes ago. We don't look inward enough. Remember you said this? It's us.
Yes, indeed.
We like to make things problems, and we blame it outwardly. And I think it goes in line with what I was saying about the mindfulness, and just you don't have the time, and we don't have the time to sit down because we're socialized constantly, whether it's by our phones, whether it's by the news, whether it's by anything. But we also just don't have the time to look inside. We have the problem and find a place to blame it to somebody else or the environment or something that's beyond our control. And two, we don't really take the time to understand what is it that we did to think of that thinking. Like, a lot of a problem is a problem if you make it a problem. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
So that's why I'm asking you, in your perspective, how do you take the time to sit down and relax? And I know a lot of your gym is without your phone. You gym, like, is that one of the places where you clear your thoughts at the gym? Or
yeah, there's only in reality there's two actions where I never use my phone. It's in the gym. I only use my phone as a timer, but nothing else. I don't look at it. And very unusually, and when I play golf. When I play golf is a moment where I don't touch the phone.
Okay.
So when I play golf, I don't touch the phone. When I go to the gym, I don't touch the phone. And sometimes when I walk or I listen to a podcast, or I try not to look at my phone.
Okay. And would you say that's your moment where you're able to clear your mind, clear your thoughts, and actually, rest from the constant stimulation and socialization?
Well, yes and no. Yes, because I do think that I do. The only problem is that I do find it, and again, procrastination, excuses on my side. I spend a lot of time in Mallorca, which is where me and my wife, we have a place, and I also don't go as often as I'd like to San Sebastian, but I do feel that with the level of noise and the dynamic, and again, I don't want to sound very like superfluous saying this, but the energy here makes me hard to concentrate and really meditate with my ideas as easily as it is in my place in Mallorca, which is completely separated from the world, or in San Sebastian, which is up in the mountain. And then I do know that there I do get way clearer vision of things than I do get here in Madrid, which is where I spend most of my time.
I think, well, two things there. One, I think it's that, as like in every city, it's just going to be much harder to properly relax. But my question is, would you, if you were living in Mallorca right now, do you think that you could have a clear and calm mind every day? Because, when you're so used to something, it ends up becoming your norm, and then there is no, you can only have a clear and calm mind relative to when it's not a clear and calm mind. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, I do understand what you mean, and again, I do believe that I would have a clearer mind in Mallorca 110%.
Every day?
Most of the days, not only because of being in Mallorca, but because of the lifestyle that I have there, because of the discipline. I wake up in the morning, I go on a swim, the food is better quality, it's all literally all kilometer zero, and then there's just no noise. So at the end of the day, it will help me in reaching those objectives. Again, it's just easier. So I don't know if I told you, but I spent the whole pandemic, I went to Mallorca. So basically, the day before they shut Madrid, I hopped on a plane and I went to Mallorca. And I spent 4.5 months in Mallorca. And I felt there my lifestyle, how it was compared to what was here. And this is something that me and my wife discussed, not only cognitively, spiritually, but also from a health standpoint, physically. And again, and that's something that really made us think a lot about, me and my wife, of what are our priorities in life. But again, we have 2 kids, so I can't take them to school. You know,
Yeah.
I need to at least give them the same international access or academic possibilities that my parents gave me.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I get, but then, so that's back to what I was saying. Doesn't it not make him way more special whenever you do get to go back to America?
Yes, I do, but I think that is the state of mind and spirit and physically that I like to be continuously. I don't want it to be. I don't want it. I don't want it to be the rule. I want it to be the norm.
You don't want it to be just so sporadic that it happens every so often. You'd like it to be something more regular.
Exactly.
And is there anything that we can do to make you achieve it here in Madrid? Something that in your day-to-day life?
No, well, yeah, I mean, probably go and live in the outskirts of Madrid, which is the decision that our parents took in the day,
Yeah.
because you do get that closer than you do get in the city center.
Yeah, you're more in nature.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different lifestyle. You don't come as much to Madrid. You have a more isolated lifestyle. So again, maybe socially is not as rewarding as it would be living here. But again, my wife is way more social than I am. She likes to live in the city center. I don't. So everything is relative and depends on what are your preferences or not.
But could you not find a way for maybe once a week or every so often to come and get out of yourself? You know, go for a Sunday run and you go and you take the car and you go an hour away from the city. Yeah,
that is a very good option, especially taking into account all the trekking possibilities there is in Madrid. Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Just as a solution to clear your mind a little bit, go walk a little bit.
It
I've
is.
noticed for me now is because I'll spend so much time at my desk during the week. I will now on Sundays make the effort to go. I'll take Molly and I'll go and we'll walk at least for an hour. To go
Where do you go and walk?
The park is right here, right?
Yeah.
So either the park or down and up, and we'll go all the way up to up. So it kind of depends. As long as I'm walking and I'm out, and I will try not to take my phone. It depends if I know that I need. Now it's happened where when my girlfriend Hannah was here, because I wouldn't take my phone, my dad and mom every time they wanted to reach me, they'd call her because they got so used to me not having the phone. But I just think it's not easy either to go without your phone, because if someone needs to reach you, I think they'll always find a way to reach you if they really need to reach you. But there's always I don't know. It's a very thin line, you know.
Yes.
It's a very, very thin line. So that's where it's a little bit complicated, no?
Yeah, but like again, so I tell you what's my definition of success.
Yeah.
My definition of success is when my uniform, that I can go to any meeting in flip-flops, shorts, and a t-shirt, and my phone is a Nokia 3210. That if anybody wants to speak to me, they call me. That's my definition of success.
I love that you have it so.
Not living in Madrid, or in Mallorca in San Sebastian, or maybe in Costa Rica,
Anywhere.
But that is my definition of success. And obviously, very important to. I mean, some people say that if they would win the lot, I like working. I love my job. I love the people with whom I work. I love my job, and it is very important to be intellectually stimulated through what you do. So, and there's many different things that you can do nowadays, but I would like to have an occupation that would give me kind of like now that flexibility.
Yeah. But you were saying this before, that now you're in this digital landscape that's allowing you to maybe get there a little bit, right? Like
Yes,
you have more
it does.
flexibility. You're seeing your kids more. So do you see yourself, or do you see the way where, like, you know, the whole education system and the whole everything is getting decentralized, right? So do you see that progression aligning with that vision that you have for yourself?
You've opened a line of conversation that I don't know if you want to go down that path, because so from a conceptual standpoint, what you're saying, yes, without a doubt. However, the concern here is that many of the jobs and works are being automized from artificial intelligence and machine learning, that is still in an early stage, that many, not all, but many of the white collar, we're not talking about blue collar jobs, which can be taken by robotics and different machinery, but algorithms can do many actions that you and me can do on a daily basis, automatedly 24/7, more accurately than we can do. So eventually I think the world will go that way, because it's going to be more decentralized. And even though in COVID we had more home working, now people are coming back to the office. I do think that naturally it will go back much to home working and digital nomads. But I do think that how the impact that technology in this new lifestyle will have in many people's lives, especially kind of like I'm borderline 37, 40-ish, 50-ish. If an algorithm would take my role or job, how would I be able to refit and get adapted for the new? It's a very, but I suggest we don't go down that path, because it's like really.
It's a very thin line as well.
it's a very thin line, and that's more like holistically from where the world is going and how technology can impact the lives of all of us.
I just think if there's one thing I can say to that I think is any creative, and when I say creative, is anything that you're doing that is only you can do, that's unique to you. It's physically impossible for anything to replace you. If it's if it's your combination of unique interests and personalities and traits, and the knowledge that you have, all the podcasts you listen to, all the books you read, all the music, or everything is in you. If your job is, and the thing that brings you money, because at the end a job is what brings you money, right? So if what's bringing you money, it's allowing you to live, is something that's unique to you only, it's going to be very hard to be replaced, at least.
Yes, no, and I totally agree about that. Actually, yesterday when I was flying back from London, I was listening to the podcast of Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, and he was saying how eventually that he believed he was more pro-human, which I was surprised of listening here saying. He was discussing about the Neuralink and the chip of Elon Musk and so on and whatnot, but he was more like, rather than having something as invasive, having something eternally. But I do believe that our unique essence, which is what you were describing, will probably have to coexist somehow to be enhanced through something that is technological or artificial.
Yeah, and that's now a different point that I have less commentary on, because I just have less knowledge on as well, or most of us do. But I do agree with that, and that's why I think a lot of what the jobs have become a lot of online creator jobs. A little bit what I'm trying to go for is the creative lifestyle, the creator economy is what they call it, where it's you having your personal brand that's unique to you, Antxon, or to me, Julian, or it's my combination of interests, my things. I can guide and help, coach, or create a community of people who are like-minded individuals who want to learn from somebody who's one step ahead of them in this creator decentralized economy, sharing a space. And again, that's really hard to be, like you said, maybe entirely replaced, just because it's very unique to me, and it's an ever evolving. You're evolving with the landscape of life, which is a beautiful perspective.
Yes, and then I do think that. So specifically as well, and I'm referring to you also the ecosystem in which you are, of like the digital content creators. But again, I do think that people have lost a lot of faith within the traditional system, and kind of where it's guiding them, the information, disinformation, what yes, what not. And I do think that is why people and figures like you are very relevant in that sense, in which you give an honest opinion on your thoughts. As you say, this is my opinion. You don't have to be a preacher and dictate, which I do think many do. And I think that that's very valuable, because we live in a very broken society. People are having very hard times, and people are looking for something that can inspire them, something that can help them. And it's always better coming from somebody that has done the job and the homework before, kind of like you have and you are and will continue doing, because this is an everlasting process. And being able to share that wisdom with the people in a passionate and honest way, so they can really become better people. And I truly believe in the value that you do is extremely valuable, especially nowadays.
I appreciate that perspective. And I think that's exactly what drew me to that. Is I was seeing it on my ex, especially during that moment. That's why it links. That's why I relate a lot to where I am now, 4 months later. Like my head relates it to you, I think, and my body too, but in my emotions, because when you and I rekindled, and you gave me that book, and that's one of the many books. The Daily Stoic is one of the many books that all these creators online that have already succeeded, that have already their definitions of success, that they've already made money online, they've already are doing the digital nomad life. A lot of the books they recommend is the Daily Stoic, so it was an interesting coincidence. But before even, because you gave me the Daily Stoic, and I think it was 1 or 2 weeks in between that, where I was just scrolling through my Twitter, normal or X, and on that is when I saw that many were giving these advice, like, here are 5 steps that I've taken this year to kill my shyness. Here are 5, and then you start reading, and then a lot of the process goes from what you were saying. It's your opinion. So you're sharing with the world your why, your reasons, how you view the world, which is a little bit what I was telling you about a relationship. So you and I, what I love about our conversations is it doesn't matter if we agree on anything. I think a lot of things we do agree on a lot of, and I'm sure there's some things that we don't inherently. But what I love about our conversations is that that's never the focal point. The focal point is on sharing how you see the world, how I view the world, to be on that same page.
Exactly, but that's how you become a better person. You know what I mean? The sense is, I think that the biggest wealth that you and me have is the international cultural background that we have. First of all, we are completely aware that we are nothing and we're meaningless because of how the world is shaped, and coming from, even though you're closer than even though you're closer to it than I am to Lebanon, in my heart I do feel Lebanese. It's a lot of instability, a lot of complication, but a lot of mixture, a lot of love, a lot of passion, a lot of generosity, a lot of entrepreneurship. I mean, all these things are really important in basically getting to the point of what you're referring to now.
I agree, and that's what I don't know.
And then one last, sorry to cut you. One last thing that I wanted to say, and the relationship of, I think the relationships need to be balanced, and with you and me, it's always been very reciprocal in the sense that I've learned and gotten as much inspiration from you than you have from me. 100%. And that's very important, because even though I was in a different situation, way more stable because of this, I do have my curiosity, and I did want to do this and I didn't, and I do put this excuse, oh, now I have kids. But again, seeing action does inspire action.
I'm so glad to hear that. And when you said that before, that you touched me when you say that, because a lot of it is also what I'm learning, a lot of, like what I was saying before, like the personal brand is a lot about before being even a creator, you have to kind of share with people what it is. You're kind of like curating your learnings. It's like we stimulate a lot of podcasts, a lot of books, a lot of movies, and like I think you said before this, you were saying that right now you're having lunch and you hear all these conversations of people and they all point to things that you were already thinking about, right? You were saying and a lot in the book I'm reading says a lot about looking for the clues. This is one way that you look for the clues, is by just stop being socialized, put your phone to the side a little bit, like we were saying earlier, and kind of pay attention, because a lot of material for your work, and when I say your work, it's your life, a lot of material for your life and things that are for your thoughts surround you at every turn. You just don't realize it because you're constantly glued and paying attention to your phone, or
indeed.
So you don't pay attention. But so I think there's just so much, and I do agree that our relationship is very reciprocal, where I have learned so much from you, and I'm glad to hear that I can give you even some kind of value. But you know what I was saying before, it's not just a relationship between friends where we share with each other how we view the world. It's like it can be a relationship from even you and your wife, or you with your father. Like, a lot of misunderstandings happen, and unfortunately, in families, in marriages that end in divorce, or even in friendships that end with the friendship ending, or even in business partners, where a lot of it has to do with a lack of communication, a lack of
totally,
because they don't share their why. And I think this is one of the many things I love about this creator economy, about the online world, about content creators, that it's so genuine, and most of them are very genuine and authentic. And and they all know it's about them. So it's like you're adding your own, you're curating everything you're simulating, and then you move on to the role of a creator, where you're kind of creating, adding your perception, adding your beliefs, adding your opinions, and that's when you start collecting your tribe. Connecting with people who are, oh, you know what, I'm associating that thing that Julian said with Julian, and that's how you go from a creator to then a thought leader or a captivator, or somebody who is like we talked about, like Naval. Remember, I don't know if you heard the podcast at the end. Or also all the people that you love, all the people that you check out on all the podcasts. Those are all thought leaders, activators.
But the problem is, it's like happiness. How do you define a thought leader? So what level of, I mean, for me, a thought leader is somebody who makes you better, somebody from whom you learn. That can be anyone. Meaning, then there's the depth and the length of that thought leader that you're going to simulate. But I consider my wife a thought leader. I consider you a thought leader. I consider my dad a thought leader. I consider many of my cousins thought leaders. So it depends of the moment and who and what, because then again, I do think that I've assimilated, or I'm in the process of assimilating continuously knowledge, which gives me a grounder and sounder to be able to not need to get the full spectrum of something and just get a piece of everything, kind of like you do. But again, the richness of, this is something you were talking of when you came back to Madrid and you wanted to settle to Madrid. Madrid is a great city, but Madrid is Madrid. So it is what it is. No le puedes pedir peras al olmo, like the Spaniards say. So it's a great city again, but here people go to the same schools and go within the same circles, and I'm to blame for that because I do it as well with my same group of friends. But again, when do I learn? I learn when I meet with my Argentinian friend, with my Chilean friend, with my Russian friends. Those are the people, with my Lebanese friends. Those are the ones who really enrich me because I get something new out of them all the time. And I just try to get out of the comfort zone of my regular societal daily lifestyle.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And that's why, to go again to what you were saying, it's the beauty and the blessing that we have to be international and to allow ourselves to go. And I think one one fact that I read somewhere, which I don't know if it's exactly to the dot, but I heard that 1 year abroad equates to 4 years at home. At home being in maybe with your parents or living under the roof or being in the city where you were raised. And I think that goes to what you're saying. There's such if you can afford this blessing to go and travel and just allow yourself to see and take in different cultures, different surroundings, different kinds of people, different foods, different music, different everything. This is how you assimilate and develop such a rich taste and perspective on the world that otherwise, like you said, is so minuscule.
But it's minuscule everywhere. So I just referred to Madrid because I grew up here, but it's the same in France or England, wherever you go. Those places are more cosmopolitan things. In Madrid, in the last 7 years, it's improved a lot. You've got a lot of people, foreigners coming, and it's really making the city super vibrant, super dynamic, super interesting, and way more stimulating than it was when I grew up 10, 20 years ago.
And I think I'm taking more from like your worldview perspective, as in your worldview, so your opinions, your beliefs, and everything will continually shrink if you don't allow yourself to go explore. And I think that's one of the main reasons that, as one of the many disagreements we have in our relationships, it's maybe with our parents, because our parents sometimes kind of impose beliefs on us, impose, a lot of things that we perhaps haven't even had a chance to explore, and we commit to them before exploring. And that's where I think it affects a lot of people, especially nowadays. And I'm curious to know how you do it with your kids, because I know it's very uncharted territory and it's not easy. I know now you have 2 kids, so maybe it was different with the first one. But what's your advice, perhaps, to even me one day when I become a father? How do you go about it? Because I know that you don't want to necessarily put those beliefs and those preconceived knowledge that you have into your kids, but you also believe that what you kind of know is. What I'm asking? It's a tough situation.
Well, I also bought The Daily Parent, which is a book of Ryan Holiday and on stoicism, one day on parenting, which is highly recommended. And there is one day, which I forgot which one it was, in January, which told you can be a ghost or a guide to your son. So then I'm going to answer a question. Mm-hmm. You can be a ghost to your son if you try and transmit into him to fulfill all your frustrations. You can be a ghost to your son if you want him to be in your eyes of what is right and what you would like him to be and what you think is good or what society expects from him, being a ghost that will haunt him forever. Or you can be a guide. And how are you a guide? I think that you become a guide to your kids by, first of all, treating them like adults, because most people treat kids like if they're stupid and they're way smarter than we are. Trying to really explaining them how things are, how they work, for them to logically understand what they do, and then giving them the tools for them to be able to succeed. Tools are forcing them in mathematical knowledge, for instance, or for instance, I speak 5 languages, and I've never had to learn a single language. I assume you're the same, because in home we heard all the languages. So the brain of a kid forms itself 90% from 0 to 3 and 10% from 3 to 6. So we have somebody, a teacher who teaches both my kids Mandarin, so they can have that extra, so they can open up and broaden their world and communicate with the 1.3 billion Chinese. So, and then what I can do is put them boundaries. And you need to put boundaries, because if you don't put boundaries, kids become pretty diabolical, because they think they can do whatever they want. And life is not like that. Yeah. And so that is kind of the approach that we're using, is giving them the tools in terms of, academically, so then they can make their own decision. So I give him the tool, but I don't want him to do anything that I would like him. I give him the tools so he can then decide what he does with them. What I'm giving them is putting them boundaries. I'm putting them limits, and then I'm showing them to be good people. The other day I was in the park, and my kid, I take him and feed the turkeys and go to the retiro and give the dogs. Man, this girl came, this little baby girl with the parents, and I said, give him a piece of bread, and he gives her a piece of bread. And when he had only 2 pieces of bread, I didn't say anything to him. He went and he gave her a piece of bread.
Wow.
And you need to educate kids not on being only brilliant, but also being good people.
How did that feel to see that?
Man, I was so proud.
Did you tell him?
I did tell him.
How did he react?
He smiles because I always reinforce him positively.
Good.
There's no negative words. There's no negativity. It's always with reinforcing. But there are limits that he cannot cross.
Fair enough. I think that's why it's so complicated. I can't even imagine. It's so already. I cannot even imagine how. You have to figure out time for your work. You have to figure out time for your marriage. You have to figure out time for living your own life and figuring out your shit, and then also taking care of 2 kids. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it's the biggest priority at the end of the day. So everything else is secondary. Oh yeah, it's the best thing in the world. Like, it's the best thing in the world.
I can tell by the way you're talking.
No, it's nothing is more beautiful than that. But again, it comes with, they're going to be growing in a very challenging world.
Yeah.
And we need to give them the tools for them to be able to fight.
Of course. But that's why, where do you draw the line between telling them what it is that they should be doing it versus them figuring it out alone? Because a lot of the figuring out alone is part of the identity process, right? Like, for a kid, you want to figure out that a little bit, what it is what it is you like. Because I think, again, people don't look inward enough. What does it mean when you don't look inward enough? It's a sign of a lack of identity.
Yes.
A lack of self-awareness.
Lack of confidence.
A lack of confidence. It's a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-esteem. It's so many things. And I think this ties in very well to what we were just talking about maybe half an hour ago now, that everything is a problem and you make it a problem when you choose it's a problem. And usually you choose it's a problem when you don't lack the self-awareness, the self-confidence, and the necessary introspection, because you haven't identified with yourself to
Totally.
know. And that's why it's like, as a parent, where do you know where to draw that line between, let me help my kid shape up and know what to do and place those boundaries, but then also, where do I let him go and explore and allow himself to find himself?
I mean, I don't think that's a very tough question. It's a tough question, and I don't think there is a right or the wrong for that. What I do is I'm very strict within the lines that my kid can cross and the ones that he cannot. Obviously, if my kid falls down and he hits his head and he's crying, if he's not bleeding, I'm going to say, get up.
Yeah,
and if he's very hurt, I'll give him a hug. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is, it's a tough question. And I still don't have all the answers. I'll probably figure out on the go. But what I do know is that I'm educating him for 2 things. For him to have all the independence of decision making that he has, so he doesn't have to rely on me. And even though he's very young, he can do it himself. And also for him to be strong. I'm not going to let him blame things on others. I'm going to let him, everything, I'll try to make him accountable for it. Not now because he's too young, but I start teaching him the value of food. Once he had a tantrum and he threw the plate, you go to bed, you're not going to eat. And what he loves the most thing is eating. So those are things that are limits that you start putting. But again, when do you think you started exploring? When do you think that you reached that point? Because it's just...
It's a good question. I think at 18, when I left, specifically going abroad to see the world. And that's why I think it ties in very well what we're saying and why I thought of this. Because I truly do believe that 1 year abroad is truly 4 years at home, especially when you're under 18. I think now I'm technically back home, but it's very different. I'm an adult. I'm doing my own things. Like, my parents are barely home. So I do think it's that when you're 18, I would encourage everybody who's 18 to go out and go to university outside of your country. So for your kids, I would encourage you from my own experience, because I've had a lot of my dad's friends who had kids who were younger than me, or maybe my brother, like Jamie's friends, who would come and ask, Julian, would you recommend my son to go abroad to study? And my answer is always yes. Like, the independence, the identity formation that you get as an 18-year-old is unmatched.
And the self-sufficiency.
That's exactly where I was going. It's exactly learning how to properly cook, learning how to, figure out how, like, the amount of times, you don't have to be, maybe it took me like 10 times to be like, whoa, I have no clean underwear and I have to go do my laundry. Maybe it's an example. I don't know if that actually happened to me.
But I know exactly. Man, I studied in Manchester.
I'm sure it happened to you too, right?
Thing is, you went to Canada, which is way nicer than where I went to. Man,
where did you go?
I went to Manchester.
In the UK.
In the UK, I came from like beautiful Madrid, the food, the weather. Man, and I landed in Manchester.
My weather wasn't that good either, huh?
but Canada's nicer.
Yes, you're right.
But I made really good friends. The people that I met, the experiences that I had, I did three.
And you got to know yourself.
Yeah. I got to know myself a lot in Manchester. But I think getting to learn myself was in two stages. The first stage that I got to learn myself was when I was competing.
How old were you?
I don't know if you remember, I played for Real Madrid,
Yeah, how old
for
were
the
you?
Span. I was from the age of 15 till 18. I played for the national team. So I played
Football?
basketball.
Oh, okay.
I played high level basketball.
How tall are you, Antxon?
6'6".
That's I'm 6'3". You're taller than me, man.
Not really.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm 6'3", not more.
No.
Around. That's crazy.
No, I'm 6'5". Sorry, I'm 6'5".
Oh, okay. If I want.
No,
Continue. You're playing basketball.
No, that teaches a lot your limits. You know, like it's like I remember when I was in university. You know, it really taught me my limits, how much I could push my body, like really to the extreme. Then the second part was more psychological, emotional. Of how do you deal with loneliness
And love after.
and
love.
loneliness, love. It's how do you deal with it? How do you deal with that? And again, you just
Figure it out.
you figure it out. Exactly. That's where it comes in. You figure it out.
That's what I love. But you wouldn't be able to figure it out as much if you were at home, because you would rely on that vulnerable instinct that we have as kids to rely on our parents. You know, I think I was telling you this, that we all were vulnerable when we were younger to the love of our parents.
Yes.
And life is this process of toughening you up. That as you grow, you go through stages, you go through trauma, you go through loneliness, you go through pain, heartbreak, whatever it is, to the point where you kind of close off that vulnerability because you're scared to feel that pain again. And when you're around 18, that age where identity is supposed to start forming, you kind of close off that vulnerability, shed it away because you don't want to feel that. And usually your parents are not there if it's in the case that you go out. Also, the older you get, you find it like society makes it harder for you to rely on your parents. You shouldn't be relying on your parents. You should be more self-sufficient. So a lot of that closing happens. So then this is why maybe at 18 is such a crucial age to either fall in love or to, find someone to rely on, and why there's a lot of heartbreak, a lot of trauma, especially nowadays, that I think a lot of the old generation doesn't realize. I don't know if you would agree this, but I think a generation above ours doesn't realize, like maybe our parents, and maybe a little bit above that, they don't realize that the identity period of a 18 to 24 to even 30-year-old is very, very fragile, where it shapes a lot of everything that will come after it. Like I know people who are 30 who are still having those midlife or quarter life crises that is affecting them to the point where they are having to move back home, or they have to, like they need to find that vulnerability again. And that's why sometimes you fall in the vulnerability, you're falling under the spell and under the arms of somebody who sometimes you maybe shouldn't. It's a very interesting thing, don't you think?
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing, and you made a very good reflection about, because this ties into your newsletter, which by the way I really enjoyed. It's you cannot fall in love if you're not vulnerable, if you don't expose yourself to be hurt.
Exactly.
You can. And many people try to, but they have previous experiences that they haven't overcome, and they just cannot. So before you open yourself up and you become vulnerable, you need to shut all the doors in the past so you can and know yourself.
100%.
And it's funny you say, because vulnerability is in order to be vulnerable, you really need to master your ego as well, because your ego doesn't let you be vulnerable, because vulnerability is perceived as weakness, but it necessarily mustn't be weakness. But it's funny you say. I mean, I do think that there's different parts. So there's one part that if you go back and you move back home at a certain age, some people made good and bad decisions. I at a certain moment in my life, I made a bad decision not to go and live back with my parents 2 years. Nothing's wrong. But the thing is, one thing is making the decision of having to go back home and deal with it. And another one is because you just don't want to confront the reality of your situation. And so there's one part is because maybe there's a weakness and there's a vulnerability and an emotional aspect, but another one is because you just didn't really want to confront the facts of life to really be able to make that extra push or that extra effort to go where you want or you think you should go. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? On basically, because I always say, look at what people do, not at what people say.
Yeah, their actions, right?
actions speak louder than words.
Yeah. No, it's true, and I think that's exactly what I was saying in the newsletter, right? That you cannot put yourself out there. You cannot allow yourself to find the partner, or to find love, or to. And again, when I say here partner, I'm also, yes, in the newsletter I specified it around romantic sense, but I think it applies to business partner,
Everything.
friends, any relationship, right? And I think you cannot find what you want if you don't know what you want. And I think that's the key. That's the key. Is we try to find out. I'm like, it's even me. You're asking me at 18. I think it took me 4 years, and still, like, again, that's the beauty. Like, you don't want to stagnate, and I still don't even know myself now. You don't even know yourself now. And look, you said it yourself. It's an ever-evolving process, and that's the beauty of it.
And I may not even, and I may get that answer the day before I die, or I may not even find it the day before I die.
But I mean, if we're following the stance that it's ever-evolving, then you'll never figure it out, and you'll never know it. But that's kind of the beauty, and that's why I think a lot of, and it kind of ties in very well to relationships, where you want this kind of sense of mystery, if you know what I mean, like in your life, in yourself,
Yes.
and in a relationship. If you know everything about the other, it kind of gets, and people get very boring very quickly. So if you know everything about your partner from the beginning and since the first meet, that's kind of one of the things I didn't include in the newsletter and the 7 ways to find your partner. But I think one thing in the 7 ways to avoid is you don't want to know, one of the main things to avoid is you don't want to know everything, and you want to be careful of that person that could be a partner. You don't know everything about them at first glance. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do know.
It's
Yeah.
like that sense of mystery is so good for a relationship as it is for a relationship with yourself. So when you are always have something new to figure out about yourself, there's always something that can surprise you about yourself or about the other, will always do wonders for you, because it means you're always evolving. You're always, improving and always getting ahead and always moving along with this landscape of life, which is what you want. Otherwise, you stagnate. And do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yes, and the problem is stagnating, which you'll see in the book that I gave you, and also going back to the topic of that part of maybe you find that vacío or that void at the end of the age of 30 years, whatever it is. Then many people have an existential crisis. And Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, refers to it as the existential vacuum. So at the end of the day, is if you don't have any purpose in life, doesn't matter what you have, how are you going to find motivation? How are you going to find fulfillment? How are you going to quench that thirst? You just can't, because you need some kind of purpose. Purpose can be a lot. Can be your work, can be your wife, can be your partner, can be your girlfriend, can be your kid, can be anything. Can be your collection of cards or your collection of stamps. I don't know. It can be anything, but you need some purpose.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's, in a way, what I found my identity was around. I saw when I was 18 and I went to Canada, was a little bit around music. That's where I kind of found maybe my purpose at that time was music. Where I think that's what you were saying before. You were saying that you kind of found yourself doing basketball around the age of 18 and stuff, and then a second time later on, right? Maybe now when you're a parent, you kind of found yourself again. And that's kind of the beauty of identity. Is not a fixed thing. Identity is something that happens many times throughout your life, and it's
only for you. It's your identity.
It's true. But that's why I believe that do you think you found your identity maybe around the time you found basketball, before you found intimacy, so before you found your wife?
No, I think that I had like a lot of information, a lot of experiences, a lot of things that I done, a lot of things that I had seen, and kind of poor Molly. What's wrong with her?
I don't know, Molly,
Having a nightmare?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe she's.
And
I've never seen her do that.
And
she always wants to make an appearance in every episode. I'm telling you, even if she's not being shown right now, she'll always find a way to say something. Go ahead, sorry.
And then I think that my wife really helped me in that. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that behind every great man, there's a great woman, is undeniable. And I really think that my wife really did help me kind of like simmer, settle, understand, and give me that perspective that I needed to go down that rabbit hole to better understand myself, maybe of what I wanted to do, figure out definitions of what makes me happy, what not. Because again, happiness, love, they're very like ambiguous word. Love is different for all. Happiness is different for all. And she did help me a lot. So I think that she just came in the right moment for me to be able to digest, process, and get the best outcome of all the experiences that I had gone through previously.
They say that sometimes although I've always read that, and I think there's this psychosocial stages of development by this psychologist Eric Erickson that says identity always comes first, and identity comes before intimacy. But they say that sometimes for women specifically, a woman can find her identity through intimacy, and that's how sometimes it can be translated to the man, where they help the man find their identity through them finding their identity as well. Do you see what I mean? There's a little bit of what you were saying. Your wife can help you find yourself. You know, now you're finding parenting together. There's such a, I think I've said this a lot, that identity should always comes first, but I don't think that there's a recipe. It's like everything you're saying. There's no anything set in stone. That's just because it worked for me doesn't mean it'll work for you, you know?
Yeah, and there's another story I want to share with you, which I don't know if we discussed, but I mean, another big part of what changed me as a human being is, you remember at the age of 23, I had the motorbike accident. I was clinically dead for 2 minutes. I was in a coma for 6
I was
days.
going to ask you about that. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
So that was a life-changing moment. The person that I was before that was completely different.
How did your view of everything change?
Oh man, I think I was way more ambitious. I was way more ruthless. I was way more willing to do things that I don't think would have been the right thing in order to progress forward in life or through society as what people would have perceived or preferred me to do or would have expected me. And I just took I just appreciated the value of simple things.
Like?
Spending a quiet moment with my father, having a good chat, or that walk that I don't do now, but that I enjoy doing in the mountains when I go to San Sebastian. Those little moments of peace, the love, the value of peace and quiet. But then again, something very important I think is also nurturing my soul. And when I mean nurturing my soul, have you I recommend everybody reading Dorian Gray from Oscar Wilde.
Okay.
And you know the story of Dorian Gray.
No.
Dorian Gray is like, he's a wealthy British aristocrat in a specific period of England. I think it's the 19th century or 18th century. And basically, this is somebody who makes a deal with the devil. And basically says all the excesses and vice and lust and eccentricities in his lifestyle that he does are not reflective in his physical part, but in a painting.
Wow.
So his painting degrades based on what he does, like all the excesses, but his physical no. So he'll always look young and pretty and gorgeous.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is there's many actions that you can do in your life, for instance, being dishonest, being disloyal, being unfaithful, being corrupt, being mean, being you think it, that even though it may not look outside, it does rot in your soul. And those are things that I think I focus as well more on being more balanced. And I'm not a perfect human being, I do have my things, but I do try to be coherent with my values and with what I think is right and wrong, which is not basically what it is right and wrong, but it's mostly the Christian Bible values, and I do try to live upon that, and I think that's very important. And I'm not going to tell you more about the book, but it's one of the finest pieces of reading that I've read in my life. Like Oscar Wilde is one of the best authors, and I think it's the only book he wrote because he used to write a lot of theater plays.
I definitely have to read it after. What's the book you just gave me today? I just want to say this is the second book now that you've gifted me, or third. Which is I'm gonna have to catch up soon and start gifting you. So I'm gonna finish this one, and I'm gonna give you the one I was telling you about. I think you'll enjoy it. But
okay, definitely.
This man has gifted me already 2 wonderful books, the Daily Stoic, and now this one is called
Men's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
What effect has that book had on your life?
Well,
when was the first time you read it? How old were you?
In reality, the first time I read it was this year in January. Okay. I heard about it
like a month ago.
I heard a lot about it.
Okay.
I heard a lot about it, and I knew what the book was about. I knew the conceptual, but I hadn't read it. It's a heavy reading. It's a very touching reading, and I think that this human being is probably one of the documented is probably one of the greatest human beings that's ever lived, just for achieving what he has achieved in the situation that he did. It's a man a Jewish person in a concentration camp finding meaning and purpose to his life.
Wow, exactly what we were just talking about.
And the strength and the insight and the it's very few things are as powerful as what this man describes and how he, and I think that when you read that book you just realize how insignificant our petty lives are, in the sense that we're complaining about things and this and that, and you've got this man on the probably the harshest situation a human being could have undergone, trying to continue and push forward and find a reason and find a purpose to continue. And so again, it's important in finding that purpose, and it's shocking. Many people whom I know have recommended to me, and they say that it's a book that they read recurrently. I'll probably read it again at the end of the year because I'm still digesting all the knowledge, and I'll probably read it again. It's a short read, and it also talks it. So there is this diary of how he describes his situation and describes very vividly what happens in there and how he deals with it. And then again, he does kind of give his psychoanalysis at the time, which was, I'm talking about in the 60s. Last century, of where the world was going. Like he talked already about the existential vacuum. He was seeing this already in the 60s. Imagine how things are now.
Wow, I'm really, really excited to read this one, because I think the other books I'm reading, I have two others that I'm reading with the Daily Stoic, 3, but a lot of those are very sit down, assimilate, take my notes with it. 'Cause a lot of it, there's so much now. Maybe it's, I don't know. I'm curious to know on your side, because for me it's been now. Before I always used to read a book and I could just read it and I'll let it simmer and by itself, but without doing it consciously. Now it's gotten to the point where everything I'm reading, listening to podcasts, whatever it is, there's always so much room to make notes, to take learnings, to take something from it that I can then either use for my own writing, for my own life, or for just me. And I see it affecting in my subconscious. Yesterday, for example, I started having a dream. This is the first time that's ever happened to me. A dream where I was writing a chapter for the book I'm reading. Like it was adding a chapter. It's never happened to me, man. It's weird. It's like now I've gotten so used to every time I'm reading having a highlighter. You said you started doing this too,
yes,
right?
Yes, I started doing this a couple of years ago.
Would you say this is a book that also has it, or am I cursed now that every single book I read I'm going to be doing it like this?
This book is it's shocking.
Just that I just feel like I've missed the idea of just being able to sit down and read without needing to go and highlight. But there's just so much value in these books and these learnings and these, even the podcasts. I have to download this app that transcribed some of the podcast minutes for me because I want to go back to it. I want to go back to a specific moment and just simmer it.
I've got that with the Joe Rogans. So every Joe Rogan, most podcasts that I listen to, but I used to do it, and I still do a lot with the Joe Rogans.
What will you do?
I just put the number of the podcast, the name of the person, what they do,
notes.
And then what I do is I put the minute and the line of thought in conversation.
How do you do that? Like, do you take exact word for word of what they're saying?
So, for instance, the other day I was having dinner. A friend of ours came home, and we were having dinner. And Stephen Pressfield, he's a very good author of historical novels. I actually read recently Gates of Fire, which is like his historical novel of the Battle of Thermopylae, which is the movie 300. Okay. That's the real battle. And he was talking, there was a specific moment where he was talking about how souls come back together in groups. And he was talking about more spiritual things. And I just put in the minute, is the second hour or the hour 59 of the podcast. And he starts talking about this topic and he goes through this train of thought. And I've got that basically for most of the podcasts of Joe I've listened to.
It's all in your notes, huh?
It's in my notes of the stuff. I'll gladly share them with you.
Yeah, no, I think you showed me already. I think you shared it with me, and that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like it's kind of like a blessing and a curse, right? Because it's a curse where you are constantly wanting to write things down, and then it's a blessing where you get so much learnings out of it. Like a lot of either my newsletter topics or even my tweets or just anything that I have in my head. It's like I said, everything we are comes from everything we listen to, everything we sucked in.
Yeah, but think about it, Julian. The way I've been thinking about it, and hopefully I won't die tomorrow, but think about all the books that you buy and all the podcasts you buy. One day you'll be a father. Maybe your kid will need the inspiration that you find in those books. And what do you think will happen when we're not here? In maybe X amount of years, 100 years, and he's X years, and he opens that book and he finds that inspiration in that specific place.
and that highlighted.
It's also a way to
Good
kind
point.
of I'm taking it to the extreme, but again, it's for you, but it's for anybody else who grabs that book. Many of the books that I buy, they're secondhand, no?
Why is that?
I don't know. There's something
about
there's
it.
something.
You feel the person who held it before.
Yes,
huh?
I only
see
buy.
that.
I mostly, not all books, but many books I do buy secondhand, hardcover, especially from like many of the libraries in the U.S. and Canada. They decommission these books and they just sell them. Oh, there's something about it that I just love, and I love writing in the books, and I just like it. I just like it.
I agree, and I think that's what I love so much about your books. Is they're all what's the word you dedicate them in each one. Every book, he's given me 2 already, but in both books he's given me, you dedicated.
But
it
it's
to me
super important because
it's so personal.
It's
so intimate.
It's very personal. If you manage to give a book to someone that they enjoy, then you really understand that person's.
Yeah, it's true.
That person's existential moment at that time, because it's an empathy that you have of understanding, and not everybody. It's just
true.
important.
It's very true.
Yeah.
I see it a little bit like that with music. For me, I'm huge into music, so that's the
Tell
way
me about music. Which music do you like?
That's the question I was going to ask you that, but it depends on the moment. But I think that's the way I see music. And now I like it a lot because you've showed me that with books. One of the first people to gift me a book in the past 2 years was Hannah, my girlfriend, who gifted me this book about. It was about like in a way meditation at large, but it was more about kind of being alone with my thoughts, because I was going through a time where I think around when I met her, where it was around my last period in Montreal, around my last periods, and going like a little bit with that uncertainty of what was going to happen next. A little bit how we talked about before about that debilitating feeling of not knowing or having a viable career path. And she got me this book that really I read maybe in a couple of weeks, and I should find it. I don't know if it's here or if I left it even. I don't think I left it in Canada, but it's a beautiful book. Actually, I gave it back to her because I think she would really benefit from it. And I want to find out the name because I don't remember the name, so I can give it to you. What a beautiful book, specifically about understanding myself and getting to know me. Like, what is it that I want, and how to understand how do you know what you want. And this goes in line with what you're saying. For her to give me such a personal and intimate book, she had to know me. It's a little bit what you're saying. I think the way I compare it to music is when you create someone a playlist, or even think back in the days when a boyfriend would make his girlfriend a mixtape. It was so romantic and intimate because you're allowing those words in the same way you're allowing the words in the book. You're allowing those words, those lyrics, those thoughts, those emotions into that room, into that space. So whether I'm sitting in my bed reading the book you gave me, I'm now allowing the same way you allowed that author to be, or Ryan Holiday, for the Daily Stoic, to be in the presence of my room and in the presence of my head. And the same applies for me in music. I think music is a little bit, it's more universal. Not more universal than books, but it's very universal in that same token where I can give you a song that really touched me, and you could play it, and you're willingly is the key word here, letting it appear in your space and in your zone. And there's, like, you know what I'm trying to say? There's such a beauty there.
I'm going to show you the power of music. When I was in a coma, my sister Carolina would put me A Horse with No Name of
what a beautiful
America.
Song. Yes, I know that
my
song.
Favorite song. Tears will come out of my eyes.
That is, I got goosebumps. You saying
that
right now.
That's true. That's true. Huh? So, man, music is very powerful.
And you know who showed me that song?
Who?
Hannah, my girlfriend.
Really? That's my song.
It's from the 70s, no?
It's from the 70s, yeah. And I want to ask you a question. So, I'm very nostalgic. Yeah, I'm like, one of my favorite movies. Have you seen Midnight in Paris?
I have not seen that.
Well, that's very kind of like.
Should I watch it?
Yeah, amazing. I'm not a big fan of Woody Allen, but that's a good movies of his. Okay. And I feel a lot like that, I'm born in the wrong time.
Nostalgic,
yeah. But again, I'm not going to tell you. What's the movie, and then we'll discuss. Okay. But my question is, based on your opinion and appreciating songs like America, Horse with No Name, how would you compare the quality of the content and the true feelings that music can evoke today compared to the music of the 50s, 60s, 70s?
It's funny. 80s. I made a newsletter about that. I don't know if you read that one. Maybe you hadn't.
Which one is it?
It was one
Which
about exactly like were the 70s. I don't know what the number was. It was called were the 70s and 80s really better times, or were they just romanticized?
No, I didn't read that newsletter.
It's exactly that question. I'm asking myself because I work, as you know, with music where we curate music for restaurants, bars, and we were currently doing, and around that period where now you asked me what one of the periods we were doing recently was for a restaurant that's very farmer, rugged, very macho man kind of style, and they were looking for kind of the soft rock, kind of like from Horse and No Name all the way to Led Zeppelin.
House of the Rising Sun, The Animals.
There you go. Stanley
Painted
Dan,
Black, yeah.
Talking a little bit Talking Heads, the Beatles,
Moody
obviously.
Blues, yeah.
A little bit of that, but that kind of 70s rock, if you will, and soft rock. And I remember really, really discovering that music around then. And already from Hannah, she had already shown me so much. Because she, a little bit like you, she feels like she also is nostalgic for that time, specifically of the 70s folk. She loves the 70s folk. So she's shown me that kind of music.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I think we compare a lot. In your case, you're being very nostalgic about the past. It's kind of like we have right now the best of both worlds. Being able to have the music here in the palm of my hands. I can get access to something today as I can get access to A Horse with No Name in the same back-to-back. Like I can see my mom listening to George Michael, her favorite artist, and then to an artist of today like Harry Styles in the same 15 minutes. And it's such a beautiful feeling that we wouldn't have gotten to have back in the day.
But compared to the new content that's being created,
You're saying specifically the content, the music.
Yes, so like if you would have to benchmark 70s music with today's music.
I just think it's different. It's not necessarily better. It's different. It's like it's like, again, with the writing as well, I could fixate on a piece of writing or a piece of, or a playlist. Let's say I'm making a playlist. I could work on this playlist for the next 20 years, adding a bunch of new songs, but it wouldn't be better. It just would be different. It's like you could work on your writing on a book. It wouldn't be better. It just would be different. It's like we could always make something and spend years at it. Yeah. So I don't know if there's better. I think it just depends on the moment. You're asking me what's my favorite music right now? I couldn't tell you. It just really depends.
Words of wisdom. Yeah, I agree.
Right. It depends on the moment. This morning I was listening to, what was I listening to these days that I'm really, really loving? The Beach Boys.
Oh yeah, Beach Boys are really good.
I don't know why. Something about it. I was looking for something a little bit soothing and calm for yet the morning, but as well at night. And something about the Beach Boys music, specifically the song is Please Let Me Wonder. I don't know if you know it. But
I don't know that one specifically, but
Please Let Me Wonder is such a beautiful song. It's a beautiful song. And hearing that in the morning, waking up, as I was brushing my teeth, was beautiful, but also just as beautiful as I was going into bed. I don't know. I want to ask you the question. What's I know you said already A Horse with No Name, but besides that, is there anything else that really replays in your house?
Yeah, well, so I like America. I like The Animals, Moody Blues, Simon Garfunkel.
Of course.
I forget Nights in White Satin. Who's that one?
I'm not familiar.
Big fan of the Beatles. Love the Beatles.
What's your any favorite Beatles song that comes to mind right now?
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
It's a beautiful song. Yeah.
I like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. I love the Rolling Stones.
Oh, okay.
Painted Black is.
Yeah, I heard that yesterday.
Oh, that's Painted Black for me is.
My business partner was playing that yesterday when I got into the studio.
That's my song.
That's the song I was playing when I walked in. What are the odds that you just said that?
That is for me the song. Who else?
There's a lot of artists that I
like Aretha Franklin a lot.
Yeah.
Tracy Chapman.
Yeah. Now you're going into the R&B kind of soul section, which I like.
They're amazing.
Which is also, I'm a huge Marvin Gaye fan.
Marvin Gaye.
It's very, very sad story, Marvin Gaye. I was like, we're playing charades a little bit.
No, thinking of the guitarist, man, the famous
Jimi Hendrix. Oh, yeah, also amazing. That's why all this. What I'm saying, it's really hard, and that's why I do think that you're saying yes, it could be necessarily or objectively better music, where it's more, where it's.
How do you define
rich.
Better music?
That's why there's no better.
Right,
it's different. It's different. Right. But I think it's very rich in authenticity, which I think today is much harder to access from all content creations, not just music. I think even with movies, like a lot of people, the mistake we make nowadays is because we have instant feedback, we rely on the instant feedback. And as a result, what happens from that? You lack authenticity. And that's what I think is objectively better, in this case, actually better of the 70s and anything before now, is we didn't have that instant feedback. It's like one thing I love about writing my newsletters is I don't have instant feedback. Unless you reply to my email, which a lot of people don't, I don't have instant feedback. I know you reply to it once every often, but I love writing the newsletters because once it's published, that's it. Like, it doesn't matter. And that's why I think it's so authentic to me. And that's what the issue is with music nowadays, with content creation, with even posting on X, posting on Twitter, posting on Instagram, posting on LinkedIn. Doesn't matter. YouTube, all of it, you get instant feedback. Instant. Like, you can get direct feedback. And I think that's what Jimi Hendrix, Rolling Stones did. Everything is so, was different back then is that
Yeah.
you were so authentic to yourself and to your music. And nowadays we're not looking inward. We're looking too much, like, again, from the very beginning of our conversation, we care too much about the audience. We care too much about I care too much about what you're thinking. And sometimes I'll write the newsletter and I'll be thinking, I wonder what my dad's going to think when he reads this. But I need to not think about that. I need to think about, what does Julian think about it?
Yeah.
What do I think about it?
What's
do I like
coming out
it?
of your heart?
Exactly. And I think that's what really helped me is I will write the newsletter and I will put in 30 minutes every day. 30 minutes every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the way till Friday because I release it on Saturdays. And I'll spend 30 minutes where I block my time with no other input and I just focus on if I like it or not. After every sentence, do I like it? If I like it and do I agree with it, that's all that matters. I will consider people's feedback. A lot of my family loves to give me a lot. They're my biggest motivators and my biggest haters, as I'm sure you can agree. But it doesn't, I will take their feedback very, very, and I think I said this in the newsletter yesterday. I said at the beginning, right? A lot of people love to consult you on your love life and on your life as a whole.
Yes.
But nobody knows your situation better than you know it. Nobody
exactly.
knows it. They lack all the necessary context because it's so easy to criticize. It's so easy to complain. It's so easy to just find problems. It's so easy to tell you everything you're doing wrong. But what people lack is so hard for me to ask questions, for me to put myself in your shoes, for me to own and possess the emotional maturity, the emotional intelligence to understand and highlight what Antxon is going through, to be on that same page.
And that takes time.
That takes a lot of time.
And a lot of listening, a lot of understanding, yeah.
And that's what we talked about. And that's what I love about our conversations is I feel like we're always on the same page because I think we're actually listening to each other. Like I'm actually listening to you, and I can tell you're listening to me. We both have a love for Alex, my cousin, who I think he's a great listener. I always say this to Alex. I think and I'm going to get him on the podcast, I think next week.
But he's very wise as well. He's
very
got a lot of
wisdom. I'm excited for people who don't know him to meet him the same way I was with you because I think you're such great listeners. And a lot it's our critical mind kicks in very quickly, right?
Yeah, but we're also very sensitive, no? I mean, I do feel it's... I think is probably the background. At least I know I do have that from my mom. It's that passion and that energy, makes us.
But it's a beautiful thing to have that.
It is.
Just got to learn how to balance it and how to allow it to come out when it comes out. And I'm very passionate about music, for example, but I also understand a lot of people don't listen to music. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people just cannot be. And I'm learning. At the beginning, I was very fixated where I was like, oh, impossible. Everybody has to love some kind of music. And it's okay. Not everybody will love everything. Look, even you who doesn't listen to it 24/7, you have that one song that got you out. Like it relates to your time in the coma, you said.
That's like the French say, no, les goûts et les couleurs ne se discutent pas.
Which means in English?
Which means that tastes and colors cannot be discussed because everybody has their own tastes and their own colors, and it's not. I cannot tell you that green is better than blue if your favorite color is blue and mine is green. Because again,
doesn't matter.
Because you prefer blue and I prefer green.
And that's the same with opinions. That's why I think so many relationships dissolve because you don't take the time. You go straight to not listening and you go straight to critical mind. Let me attack the position. Let me defend. Let me counter argue. And it's exactly what you're saying. Like it's the same way if we all saw it as if it's just green and blue. As if I have my opinion and my girlfriend has her opinion. I should take the time to sit down, listen to her opinion, seek to understand her opinion, and then end up on that same page. Even if I'm in disagreement, it doesn't matter. Like my opinion is inherently irrelevant to hers because if she's feeling that way, she's feeling that way. I can't change the way she's feeling. Indeed. That's one thing that I practice with my girlfriend is every time that we have an issue, I'm learning and I'm telling her, like, Hannah, it doesn't matter what I think because if you're feeling this way, then you're feeling this way. Like now my time is to understand. Why are you feeling this way?
Yes.
Is it an internal struggle? Is it something that I did? Is it something that I did that maybe has to do with something that you faced 5 years ago? There's so much depth to our emotions, but we don't allow ourselves to look inward, which is what you were saying at the beginning.
Yes, and it's not easy looking inward. It's not easy.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think that's the unfortunate truth of why so many relationships dissolve or butt heads.
True.
Because we don't take the time. We don't take the time. And I think it's our continual search for efficiency. Again, going back to the constant stimulation and socialization. We know we don't have enough time. We don't give ourselves enough time. How does our days just run out like this? We don't give enough time because we live in this world where everything has to happen by the minute. If we're not constantly doing something, we feel anxious. We feel, and I think that's translated into our relationships. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people need to pay attention moving forward is take the time to listen. Take the time to pay attention to the person you're talking with because you're allowing you're not listening. You're not listening enough. You're not
But
listening.
are you not listening, or do many people not listen because they do not have the time? Or maybe they do not listen because in reality they're selfish and it's all about them?
Both. I think it's a mixture of both. A lot of it is I don't have the time, and I'm already thinking, like, I'm a lot of people, and I'm sure we're both guilty of this, and I know I am, where I can already hear someone talking and I will already start, my answer is already in my head, and I'll just think about my answer because I don't want to forget it. Now I'm making the conscious effort every time I'm listening to anybody is, I need to.
Sorry, Molly.
she's just awake. Molly. Every time I make the effort that now I need to push away that I want to physically pay attention, because this is something that Rick Rubin says in his book. He says, your eyes have a lid, your mouth has a lid, but your ears have no lid. They're always receiving. We're always openly receiving sounds. So it's really hard to take everything in. What do you think? What do you think of that? I see you nodding your head.
I'm processing what you're saying, and indeed it is, and that's why, I mean, at the stage and moment that we are right now, that we're just continuously assimilating is, we need to figure out how we put, what filter do we put in order for that? Thank you. What filter do we put in order for all that information coming in to really throw in the bin what's not useless and really input into or store in our brain what is?
Exactly.
But then again, as you say, we assimilate so much information and we write down in the books, and it's hard to get back to it later on. So, but it's interesting. What we need to do is have a filter and really resonate. So I was walking here. I was thinking that, when the importance in reality to have a well-sound information opinion, and you need to do a lot of research. So it is true that the mouth and the eyes, and the ears do not have any lids, and we can assimilate. For instance, I'm way better assimilating information listening than visually.
Interesting.
I can't watch a video. I mean, I can barely finish.
You said that, yeah. You barely can watch 4 minutes of YouTube, right?
I can't watch a video more than 1 or 2 minutes on YouTube, and I'm already clicking on the next and the next.
So thank God this podcast is both listening and audio. Thank God.
No, but I do. But the podcast is different. It reaches a meaning.
Interesting. What do you think about that?
I don't know. Like one of the other day, I didn't have any headphones like a couple of months ago, and I just couldn't be bothered to get them, and I've been continuously forgetting to get them through Amazon. And I had to watch a podcast, the video, and listening to it in YouTube. And that was the one I was telling you of, PBD, which is another podcaster that I like a lot of this bishop, Mare Manuel. And I managed to do it. Wasn't easy, but I managed to do it 2 hours and a bit. And yesterday, I watched, just to give you 1 hour 40, the one of Joe Rogan and Sam Altman. And I did manage to do it. But maybe it's because I know what I'm getting into, I know what I'm watching, and I know that I'm going to get valuable information from it, rather than just watching a video that maybe the title or headline catches my attention. Yeah. Because I do know the input and the value that information is going to generate in my brain.
Yeah, you already know what to expect. You know what you're getting yourself into from the beginning, especially when it's a podcast of someone you've already seen or heard or spent time with. You know, it's like in psychology, they say when you spend 7 hours with someone, like someone you don't know, so whether it's on, through podcasts and stuff, I'm sure by now you've spent over 7 hours with Joe Rogan. In just 2 episodes, you spend more than 7
exactly.
hours. But you know what I'm trying to say? It's like you've now have already signed up to like his rabbit hole in a way. And they say that a lot, that for content creators, once a fan has spent 7 hours with you, they're in your funnel. They're in your rabbit hole.
Interesting.
It's a very interesting thing. I wonder if it applies to real life as well, to people who I'm sure it does. Like if I now look, every time I spend more time with you, I love it, and I'm now looking forward for the next time. So there's always.
Yeah, I think yes and no. I think that there's a part of that. There is a connection. There is an energy. I don't know how to explain it.
100% true.
With which you don't need 7 hours. You can have that in 1 minute.
In real life, you mean, or also on the screen?
No, in real life.
Yeah. Do you think on the screen as well, though?
No, on the screen it's not the same. Maybe yes, maybe you can have affinity in a conversation or a specific rabbit hole that you can go, but I don't think it's as powerful. It doesn't create that bonding.
Interesting.
It's I was going to meet with you and I hadn't seen you. I mean, I had a proper conversation with you, and immediately it was like boom, very flowy, very mellow. I'm very sensitive to the energy of people. Like very super sensitive.
We all are.
Something I really work on. If there's some people that just don't give me good energy.
So what do you do to differently or what are you doing differently? Is she bothering you?
No.
What do you do differently to, I guess, feel the energy? Is there anything specifically that you're consciously doing to detect the energy, or not?
Well, some people give you good feeling, others don't. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, fair enough. I thought you were saying that there was something you're trying to pay more attention to.
No.
Okay.
Well, obviously you do pay attention as to the body language, the message that they give, how they speak, how coherent they are. Yeah. But mostly, I'm telling, oh man, no, this person just doesn't give me.
Yeah, you feel it, and I think you gotta trust your gut more.
Oh,
That's another thing that we don't do enough. Besides not listening,
I do that. I do that a lot. I really try and follow more. Some parts of my life I do follow my intuition, and others I don't. I do restrain it more.
It depends on the context, I suppose.
Yeah.
Right. Fair. I think
the context and what's at stake.
Yep. Yeah. Interesting. Which is interesting because I feel like sometimes and that's what I think is when the stakes are really high, we usually don't trust our gut as much. Would you say, or do we trust it more?
Oof, I don't know.
In your experience,
I haven't had that many situations. I mean, if the harder situations that I've had in life that I don't want to get into detail here of, maybe more extreme, I've done what my mind and subconscious has been programmed to do, and nothing happened to me. More on a personal level rather than a professional level.
Interesting. Okay.
But again, I've made decisions professionally that on a gut instinct have been right, and wrong, more right than wrong. But again,
and sometimes you gotta do it. You know, you gotta do it to learn. 'Cause sometimes you gotta do it to then properly iterate from that gut feeling. You know, for next time you'll have the framework and the roadmap to kind of know. So
it's very important you work on it. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So there's no wrong, but I do agree with the energy, and I do not to counter argue, but I do think that you can feel some kind of energy on the phone or on a screen when talking to someone. So not necessarily. I asked the question from a Joe Rogan perspective, where if you're watching a podcast like Joe Rogan's, could you feel his energy? It's tougher because he's not directly talking to you. But I do think that a lot of people now in this digital landscape, whether you have a client online and you're trying to sell to your client or converse with your client, I think a lot of your energy can be felt through because you lack a lot of nonverbal cue and behavior, like you're saying, online, that you can make up for it through energy. So through your smile, through a smile and positivity can really be heard through the phone. So I think that's where energy plays a really big role as well in the online world, where a lot of people now are making a lot of business, making a lot of money. A lot of it is online, and a lot of it is on how you carry yourself non-verbally and how you carry yourself verbally, because you're missing all the non-verbal.
Yes.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah. I mean, again, maybe I'm a bit disconnected with that, and that's why I haven't worked it as much through that channel and feeling. But I do see there are people who can inspire me through other channels, and I can get that feeling. I just think it's way harder, or I just haven't maybe communicated as fluidly as others.
Interesting. Well, we've been talking for like over an hour and a half, and it's amazing because it doesn't feel like it, right?
Speaking for an hour and a half?
If not more. I think we started like almost an hour and a half ago, but I think there's just I love talking with you. I love your perspective. It's like I told you before, I love your philosophy. I love your way of life. I love how deep you are and introspective, which I think that many of us could learn from you. And I think if there's one thing that I wanted people, my viewers, or just our viewers, or people who will watch this, is I wanted them to see how deep you can get, and the perfect example of what listening looked like. Because I think you evoke that, what a real conversation should be like. And I think you have all the necessary boxes checked when it comes to a real human conversation. I really, really appreciate talking to you. There's something about not only your story that I know a little bit of, and I'm fortunate to know a little bit of, but there's so much, even, and before we end, I'd love for you to, if you don't mind, share a little bit about the motorbike incident, if you're okay with this, of course.
Yeah,
just
sure.
A little bit of, not how it changed your life, as you already shared the difference between both, but a little bit on how, I guess, life is so fragile, right? And how in just 1 second it can be gone. If you could just walk us through a little bit, if you're okay with it, of course. I don't want to initiate any trauma or anything back.
No
but
problem.
Just to end on not on a negative note, but I just think it's such a beautiful survivor story of yours, and I love, and if you can share a little bit about your sister sharing like that song as well, America by America.
Well, I mean, it's, as you were saying, life is very fragile. Like, most people think they're going to be here forever. But if you put into context, imagine you started going out with your girlfriend 5-6 years ago, and you look back, how long ago did you really start going out with her? It's like this. 5, 6, 7 years. I told you I did a podcast with one of my dear beloved teachers, Bal from IE, who was one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met in my life. And Alex knows him as well. And I was saying, man, I've already known you for like 7 years. And if I put that into context, I'm going to be dead tomorrow, literally. And that's what the Stoics say, memento mori.
Yeah.
Memento mori. And we really need to live and understand every day. So what did I, from the accident itself, the experience that I figured out is that, as you said, life is way more fragile. Man, I'm blessed. I had an accident at 120 kilometers an hour. My helmet was untied. I'm walking. I'm alive. I didn't break a bone. Man,
you're protected.
Thank God. So what I'm trying to say is, man, and this doesn't mean live the life to the fullest. There's no tomorrow. Do what? No. It doesn't have to do with us. Live a better life.
Yeah.
But
make
not
it,
a better.
worth it.
But not a, exactly. Thank you. Make it worth it. But don't do it for others.
Mm-hmm.
Do it for yourself. Forget about others. Do it for yourself. Because you owe it to yourself. Because once you get that, you'll be better with yourself. You'll be better to your wife, your partner. You'll be better to your kids. And within my sister, well, my sister knew I liked that song, and my sister's very emotional. And she put that song in my ears when I was in, and I cried, and it made me emotional. And most people who know me, I don't remember the last time I cried. And I'm not saying as that it's something that is good, because I believe that it's important to cry, to let go. The only problem is that the way that I've been wired, I haven't been able to tap into that side of my emotions. And even if I want to, and one day I'll have to. Maybe I'll have to do something like psychedelics. Maybe that will open Pandora's, and maybe that will get all the hidden trauma that I have based on that past experience that I'm describing now. I don't know. But again, live a good life, live it for yourself. And living a good life is not living a good life projecting to others that you're living a good life. Living a good life is being honest with yourself. Being true to yourself. Because the day of tomorrow, we're going to be dead in our moment of reckoning. And you can't escape that. And you can't say, oh yeah, I think I lived a good life and I project a good life. No, you need to live a good life. Wow. And the world is in need of that, because the world is in a bad and dire situation. And we need to live in a more humane way within each other. And I think that having that honesty within yourself, of being true to yourself and good to yourself, will help in being just creating a better world. And I've got my flaws. I don't live a perfect life. But again, I try to.
You're so well spoken. I hope one day you will write a book yourself as well. I think you have such beautiful stories. I think you could write them like some. I think you have so much. Not only you've read so much and you're so intellectual, but I think you have such a beautiful life story as well to share that is far from over. So I'm excited. Hopefully, in the next 20, 30, or even maybe next year, I hope that one day you will bless us with a book.
Thank you. And I'm going to tell you that if I do so, you will have definitely been a very important part of it, because you've been an inspiration of how you've managed to be so proactive and active in doing this so well.
I appreciate your words. I appreciate your words, Antxon. No, I just that was a beautiful thing you just said. You really touched me. You really, really touched me. And I think now I always play a song at the end of the podcast. That's usually always something that I want the guest to share. But today, if you don't mind, the last song that we'll play will be A Horse With No Name by America, if you're okay with that.
Please.
I'm so happy you said that song. But thank you for sharing that beautiful story. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making the time. I'm so excited for our next coffee, for our next conversation. Like always I'm excited to read all these books. Excited to finally be able to dedicate my first book to you. And I will do it very soon. I'm telling you, mark my words. And I'm just so grateful to have you in my life so regularly, and to many more times, my friend.
Anytime, my friend. And this, it's very important to take care of the good people you have in life. And you've become within this circle very shortly, And anything you need, you can always count on me. I really admire what you're doing, and yeah, anything you need.
You know, it's the same here, Antxon. Thank you so much, my man. I appreciate you so much.
Gracias.